Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the College Football Game Day Show. I hope you're enjoying the bowl games so far, but we got some college football playoff games for you as well to throw into the mix. This is our first round coverage. We got 4 games for you as these teams take on each other to try and squeeze into those second round quarterfinal games against the teams that are lucky enough to sit at home with a bye. My name is Brian McCardle. Above me here is Andy Hopper, and below me on this vertical screen here, we have Mr. Tom Scavettis. We got 4 games. Tom, I think you are going to be very invested in at least one of these games here. And it starts us off on December 20th. It is an 8 p.m. game. You're Fighting Irish. Number 7 Notre Dame taking on number 10 Indiana. Tom, you know I got to start with you every time Notre Dame plays. This is the biggest of the big games here for you guys this year. So let us know your thoughts here on this game.
It's the battle for Indiana, the wonderful state of Indiana, I should add. Notre Dame favored by 7.5. Both teams are 11-1. Look, Notre Dame, tough loss in week 2. They've rebounded since. They've won 10 in a row. These have been 2 covering machine schools this season. You've won a lot of money in your bets if you took Notre Dame and Indiana straight up. Kurt Cignetti throwing a little bit of shade at the Irish for hosting a playoff game, but it is hard to validate his complaint, unbiasedly speaking, because they did most of their damage against inferior opponents. They did not beat a team with 8 or more wins. Their best win was against Michigan, who had 7 wins. Notre Dame, on the other hand, won at Texas A&M, home against Louisville, and then 2 neutral site games against Army and Navy. All 4 of those were ranked teams at the time of playing. Now, the Fighting Irish are scoring 41 points per game, 225 rushing yards on the ground. Riley Leonard has been the de facto quarterback this season, and he's been really, really good. If you watch the show the first 4 weeks of the season, I would have said the opposite. It took him time to get gelled into this offense, contrary to Sam Hartman the previous season, who fit in right away. So the expectations were high for this kid. It took Leonard a little longer, but he answered the bell. 16 touchdowns, 5 picks, only sacked 12 times, 14 rushing touchdowns, and 721 yards on the ground. Jeremiah Love, the running back, should be good to go for this game. He has been a touchdown workhorse this season. He has scored a touchdown in every game Notre Dame has played. Just 51 yards shy of 1,000. That's because Jadarian Price right behind him, 650 yards and 7 touchdowns. These running backs keep producing. These offensive linemen keep producing. Notre Dame lost 3 starting offensive linemen this season. It hasn't mattered. They've been the best O-line in the country, in my personal biased opinion. Bo Collins and Mitchell Evans are the 2 top targets in the passing game. Mitchell Evans a little banged up to start the season. He's an awesome tight end. So the challenge for Notre Dame in this game and what Indiana presents is they like to control the line of scrimmage. Both teams do. They both run the ball very effectively, and that sets up the passing game. Each team's game plan should be make the opposing quarterback beat you with his arm. So defensively, Notre Dame has to do that to Curtis Rourke. Well, how do they do it? Riley Mills and Howard Cross up the gut need to stop the run. Howard Cross II should be back healthy with this large layoff of time. Riley Mills, 6.5 sacks as a 5th-year senior. The development of Drake Bowen next to Jack Kaiser at the linebacker spot has been phenomenal. Xavier Watts with those 5 picks and 8 passes defended. He's groomed Adon Schuler, who has 3 interceptions as well. Now, the Hoosiers are a very challenging team, boys. They score 43 points per game. You could argue, well, they haven't played too many good teams. They've played who's on their schedule, and they've won. You got to give them a lot of credit for being here, and they fully deserve to be here, regardless of who they've played. Curtis Rourke, the transfer from Ohio, went from some action to some college football playoff action. 70% completion percentage, 27 touchdowns to just 4 picks. They have 2 running backs with double-digit touchdowns. They can hit you from inside zone, outside zone, halfback stretch, toss. They do it all. Their receivers aren't too bad either. Look for the matchup of Clark against Elijah Surratt. One concern that I did have in the game against USC, and I'm sure you guys might have caught it, our one corner was Christian Gray. He was targeted the whole game. It almost lost Notre Dame the contest. Defensively for Indiana, Mikhail Kamara has 10 sacks. He'll be a problem. Amari Farrell with 4 picks, and their linebacker Aiden Fisher is very impressive too. He can run across the field and make plays. He can blow up screens. He's a problem. As I make my pick, the battle of the trenches is the key to this game. I think Notre Dame is going to do it slightly better than Indiana, and they have the home field advantage. Notre Dame wins. I want to say they barely cover. like 8
Ooh.
points.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, man, this is going to be a fun one. The Battle of Indiana, like Tom said, I wouldn't necessarily call it a wonderful state, but we'll be differed on opinions there. These two schools are less than, no, they are, yeah, they are less than 200 miles away from one another. They have not played in football since 1991. That is the only matchup between these two teams in the last 65 years. By the way, 49-27 Notre Dame victory, Tom. Also, we're gonna have a lot of white-haired boomers that pull off the reverse jacket, the Indiana basketball, Notre Dame football fans. If you're not familiar with that, folks, it's that they are going to be, having an existential crisis this weekend. But what does Notre Dame do really well, Tom? They do a lot of things really well, but one of the biggest strengths of your team is the defensive line. They are a top 5 defensive line unit in the country. What has Indiana struggled with this year? Elite defensive line play from their opponents. Let's look back at the Ohio State game. In non-garbage time, the Ohio State defense held this explosive Indiana offense to 1.7 yards per play. In the second half versus Michigan, they averaged 0.75 yards per play. So, Tom, if Notre Dame controls the trenches, good night, Hoosiers. I'm sorry, but Notre Dame has this game in front of them. They should win. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a battle for Indiana. The biggest matchup I'm watching is the quarterback matchup. And obviously, right, Curtis Rourke, the Ohio transfer, 2,800 yards, 27 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions. He's been terrific this year. Tom, I think you brought up a good point. Indiana's schedule, when you look at it, it may be lackluster, but you have to look at their margin of victory in those games. They were playing the teams on their schedule. They have no control over that. They kicked the shit out of 11 of them, and they lost to the one team that's also in the college football playoff. So I think you're absolutely right. They deserve to be there. Are they going to win this game? I don't think so. Riley Leonard and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish will march on to play Georgia after a victory in this game. Riley Leonard has 2,092 yards, 16 touchdowns, only 5 picks through the air. And if you look at what he's been able to do running the ball, it's impressive as well. He can hurt you in multiple ways, and I think he's going to do it. And I'm not going to act like this Indiana defense hasn't been spectacular this year, because they have. They have one of the top EPAs in all of college football on the defensive side. They're going to have their work cut out for them. The offensive line is going to have their work cut out for them. Give me the Golden Domers. The Irish win.
Yeah, it really is an interesting one. The in-state battle makes it even more of a fun one here. Notre Dame, they've dominated since that week 2 loss at NIU. Indiana on the other side of this, not too shabby themselves, but recency bias. They're coming off that blowout loss to Ohio State. That kind of made them pump the brakes there. It was definitely a setback for them. Luckily, they still make the CFP, as they should have. I think most people would agree. They have been pretty good on both sides of the ball. As you guys said, Indiana allowing just 2.5 yards per carry this season. That's going to be an interesting matchup against the trio of Irish footmen here that like to take off. Obviously, you got the running backs, but also Riley Leonard. As Andy said, he can take off as well. 721 yards. That's good for 5.8 yards per carry. So that's scary. You're going to have to keep an eye on him if you're Indiana's defense. And then he's paired with the duo of Jeremiah Love, who had 949 yards. That's good for 7.1 yards per carry. And also Darian Price rounding out the trio with 651. That was good for 7.3 yards per carry. So when they do decide to run, they get pretty far down the field every time that they do it. I know, Tom, you are coming around on Riley Leonard. The arm isn't still there, but, when you can let him take off on the ground and you got those two guys, helping out, it's still a pretty good offense in my mind here. As far as the defense goes, Notre Dame's secondary, they've held strong throughout the year. They're led by Xavier Watts. He's going to be my player to watch. He's got 5 interceptions and a recovered fumble that he forced. So they need to get in Curtis Rourke's head early. He's been really good. This whole Curtis Signetti team has been really good, honestly. But I want this to be a really close one. But I don't want to jinx it for Tom here, but I'm more certain than Tom is on this. I think Notre Dame wins this by over 10 points here. So I'm going. He's shaking his head. I'm going with the Irish here in this one. Then moving into our next game, we're into December 21st here. We have number 6 Penn State taking on number 11 SMU. Bit of a questionable one for some people. Obviously, SMU gets it over Alabama. Everyone that I've seen has had different thoughts and different reasonings for this loss on who they thought should get in. But, even Dabo, who just played the Mustangs in the conference championship game for the ACC, said that's a playoff team right there. Andy, they are in the playoffs, so how do you think they fare against Penn State? Who do you think is going to win this one?
This is another fun one, ladies and gentlemen. A whiteout in Happy Valley. It's going to be cold. It's going to be loud, and the Mustangs are going to have their hands full. Everybody remembers two top 5 teams in Penn State and SMU getting together in the 1948 Cotton Bowl that ended with a 13-13 tie. I don't think we have that on our hands this weekend. The Nittany Lions come in as 8.5-point favorites. What do they like to do, and what do they do really well? It's fucking pound the rock, grind their opposing defenses to a pulp with the run, and then absolutely destroy them on the defensive side of the ball with that incredible pass rush that they have. They've used it all year this year, and they've used it to stay really, really close with some really good teams. They kept within a score of Oregon. They kept within a score of Ohio State. They didn't win those games, but they've proven that they can be effective at getting to the quarterback and controlling the time of possession. They have not seen a quarterback like Kevin Jennings to this point, in my opinion. He can throw on the run, and he can hurt you with his legs if he gets loose. SMU is only allowing just over 1 sack per game. And I think that can speak to how elusive Kevin Jennings has been when getting out of the pocket. I think Penn State, no, SMU wins the game on the road. America's team, Pony Express. Give me SMU.
What a last-second switcheroo there. Tom, what are your thoughts here?
Andy gives you the exciting answer. I will give you the meat and potatoes type of answer. Rhett Lashley gets his team in. Well done, first year in the ACC. I know, a lot of us here aren't the biggest fans of Dabo Swinney, but you got to give the guy credit for fighting for SMU to get in. I thought that was very high class of him to do that.
Yeah,
personally,
well, can I play devil's advocate? Is he supposed to say they fucking suck and they shouldn't have been in after they beat him in the conference championship game? Like,
sure.
Yeah.
Or maybe he just didn't want to have to worry about Alabama. That could be
100%.
It's a 4D chess right there. I love that.
Look, Klubnik had 4 touchdown passes in the ACC title game. They were dominating early, so SMU cannot let that happen against Penn State. The transfer from Preston Stone to Kevin Jennings has been very, very good for them. He's also pretty adept on his feet as well. And Rashard Smith is a really good option in the backfield behind that offensive line. Roderick Daniels Jr. and Keyshawn Smith are the threats in the passing game for them. And how about this, boys? I don't know if you heard this, but this happened as of about 4 or 5 hours ago. SMU defensive coordinator Scott Simons has agreed to a multi-year extension.
Okay.
Led a top 30 defense in both scoring and total defense this season. So you want to wonder why the Mustangs are in the college football playoff? Their defense is a big reason why, and that's zero discredit to their offense. They've been great as well. But the defense is carried by Kobe Wilson at linebacker, Jared Harrison Hunt, Isaiah Smith, and Elijah Roberts all putting up 5 to 6 sacks on the season. And Penn State, man, I know we've thrown a lot of shade at James Franklin in the past, but look, they've beaten who they've had to beat to get here this season. A lot of people weren't big fans of them going out to play Oregon in the Big Ten title game. Let me tell you something. They showed up, and they gave them a run for their money. Defensively, they weren't great. They gave up 4 Dylan Gabriel touchdown passes, but it's Oregon. It's a Dan Lanning coach team, and I thought Penn State held their own. And I think the problem for Penn State is what happens if SMU shuts down the run and you're forced to rely on Drew Aller to throw 30, 40 passes? I'm not sure you'll get too kind of an answer from Brian McArdle down there, but let me tell you something. He's not bad as far as his mobility. He also has 6 rushing touchdowns on the season. He can take off when the play breaks down. Nick Singleton is an awesome dual threat at the running back position, 7 rushing touchdowns, 5 receiving. Katron Allen is the bell cow as far as goal line red zone situations. And they have, in my opinion, who is the best tight end in the nation, Tyler Warren, 88 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 6 tutties, 4 1,000-yard games this season. 4 100-yard games this season, excuse me. That includes a 224-yard single-game performance. And the problem for SMU, it's Savion Byrd trying to fend off Abdul Carter. They're going to have to chip him or something. He's going to be a massive issue. 10 sacks on the year, 2 forced fumbles. Penn State loves to control the line of scrimmage. Ask Andy Hopper about that. I'm giving you the boring answer here. I think Penn State wins, although on the surface, before doing my research, I was leaning towards SMU. Once I did my research and watched the highlights from, Penn State games this season, Nittany Lions win this at home.
Yeah, so, I don't know about you guys. I do think SMU deserves to be in over Alabama. Do they win this game? I'm not so sure, which is unfortunate because they played really well all season. They played really well in that conference championship game. It's a high tempo Mustangs offense, but they do go up against a really stiff Nittany Lions defense, like you said, led by Abdul Carter. He's got the 10 sacks. He's got the 20 tackles for loss this season. Yes, Jennings is mobile. He can get around. But if Abdul Carter's breaking through that line early and often, you don't want your QB scrambling all the time. He's one of the best players in all of college football. He's probably going to be one of the first 10 players off the draft board. They really, really need to contain him if they want to stick in this game. The Mustangs, they've allowed just 74.7 rushing yards per game in their last 3 games. So as far as trends go, that's really good because they're going to go up against that tag team of Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. As Tom said, Aller can also take off on his feet a little bit. I don't know if I trust him to do that, but he does have the ability to do it. Man, I mean, SMU, they played Clemson really close. It was a really good game. I thought both teams looked like true CFP teams in that game, and that's maybe the first time ever that I've agreed with Dabo Sweeney on anything. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, Penn State's game against Oregon also pretty surprising. I thought they were going to get blown out. It looked like they were for the first half, and then they stuck in it. They did better than expected. This is one of those things where I think the home field advantage is really, really nice for this playoff setup. I think it is going to help Penn State here. And on your note about Aller being forced to throw, I'm not. I had to look at the right when he said that. I tabbed over to the game to check the weather report. It's going to be down in almost that snowy weather range. So I'm a Florida boy. I don't know how much more difficult it is to throw the ball when you're in snowy weather, but I think this could turn into one of those games where it's heavily focused on the run here. Yes, it's a noon game, but that cold, I don't know. For a Florida boy, I think that's going to affect the game. I'm shockingly going to take Penn State here in a battle at the lines in the trenches, focused on the run. I think Penn State has the advantage there. Next up, we have number 5 Texas taking on number 12 Clemson. They just played our boys SMU that we just talked about, who Andy flipped to last second. Andy, I'm sure you're watching that game. So, what are your thoughts on this game? Number 12 Clemson trying to sneak in an upset on number 5 Texas.
Yeah, I mean, if SMU doesn't spot Clemson 14 points at the beginning of that game, I don't think that we're even having this conversation at all. I felt SMU was the better team for 3/4 of that game, but Clemson won, and they're here. They're going to Austin. They're going to play against the Longhorns. Texas, I believe, currently 10.5-point favorites. Texas, what scares me is the turnovers and the shaky special teams. Sure, they're averaging over six yards per play. By the way, so is Clemson. But when you get down in the red zone, are you going to Ewers going to make a mistake? Are we going to see a fumble? Are we going to see an interception? They're going to have to turn those into points, especially with the stakes being so high and it being the playoff, right? You could argue that the Longhorns defense is the best in the country. I think they're only giving up like a little over a yard per play. I believe they're the best in the country there. Clemson, I think Klubnik played really, really well. I was impressed with him, near the end of the year. And then for the majority of that game, I felt like SMU really responded defensively and was able to give him some difficult looks and make it tougher for them in the second half. But part of me wants to take him again. Part of me wants to take Clemson just for some fucking Dabo magic. Not that I like him at all, but can they win the turnover battle? Can they, exploit Texas's special teams woes? Can they limit the success in the red zone? If they do that, Clemson wins this game. I don't think they're going to, though. Give me Texas.
Yeah, I mean, it's this like Schrodinger's Dabo here. You hate him,
Exactly,
but you like kind of love just that he is himself and is just so wild about it. So yeah, I'm also on the fence about this one. But yeah, Cade Klubnik here comes into the game. He is an Austin, Texas native, so he's trying to lead his Tigers into a first-round upset over Texas, the hometown team here. They go up against a Texas defense that has allowed just 3.1 yards per carry, so they've been really good. Like you guys said, one of the top defenses in the nation, if not the top. Quinn Ewers on the offense, he's had 14 touchdowns and 3 interceptions at home this season, so he does thrive when they're on their home field there for the Longhorns. But they're 0-2 when he has a completion percentage of less than 60%. That's what happens when you play good teams, good defenses. Clemson does have a pretty good defense. I don't know if they're going to force as many errors as Georgia made him throw in those 2 games. I think the first game was actually a little bit worse. They kept him at bay I think he had like 150 something yards. He did have 358 in the SEC championship game, but that was only for one passing touchdown and 2 interceptions. So Clemson's secondary has been all over the place this year. They've got 14 interceptions themselves, and that's led by their cornerback Ashton Hampton here. I think he'll be with the game in Austin. I think he'll be settled in enough to not have what happened in the Georgia games. I don't think Clemson is on Georgia defense's level. So in terms of straight matchup here, I do think it's somewhat even, but I'm going to give a slight edge here to the Longhorns to win this one. And then lastly, we have the night game here. It is number 8.
Wait, Brian. You forgot me.
Did I not start with you? Oh, no.
No.
You started.
My apologies, Tom. I knew how much you hate Ohio State, and I was just trying to get right to it so you could
All good.
shit talk Ryan Day. But Tom, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, so look, the Longhorns defense has been dominant this year. They've been led by Anthony Hill Jr., those 4 forced fumbles, 7.5 sacks. Andrew Mukaba. Janae Brown has been solid too, 5 picks. He'll be a problem. You're looking at Clemson receivers, Antonio Williams and Bryant Wesco. They do present some problems. And defensively for Texas, you'll have Colin Simmons, 8 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. They want to get to Klubnik early in this game. For Texas under center, Quinn Ewers has been Jekyll and Hyde this season. He's either been really good or really bad. I don't know how he's going to pan out on the next level, but that's a conversation for another day. Jaden Blue has been great, dual threat in the backfield to complement Quintravion Wisner. I love Gunnar Helm at tight end. I think he's a really good tight end. I think he's good across the middle of the field. He's good on those hitch routes. He's got 5 scores. Isaiah Bond, the transfer from Alabama, has been solid all year. Matthew Golden going up against that Clemson secondary should be very, very interesting. When I look at Clemson, I look at a quarterback that has developed quite nicely over the last couple seasons. Klubnik has put on a show this season, 33 touchdowns, just 5 picks. You add 7 rushing to that. That's a pretty good ratio, 40 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions. That is 8-1. Phil Maffa in the backfield is a bull in between the tackles, and Jake Brenningstool, scored 2 touchdowns last week against SMU, 7 for the season. 2025 draft prospect Barrett Carter at linebacker, really good in zone coverage, 7 passes defended. He can also blitz the QB when asked to. Clemson has more defensive power in that linebacker unit. Obviously, you got Sammy Brown and Wade Woodaz. You got TJ Parker with the 11.5 sacks. I don't know what the status of Kelvin Banks is. I don't think he's going to play. But I still think Texas has enough here to get by Clemson. But I do think it's a close one, and SEC is going to do SEC things in this bracket, in my opinion. So, yeah, hook 'em.
I forgot to mention, Klubnik and Ewers faced off against each other in high school, I believe, in either the state championship or in the playoffs. And I believe Klubnik and the Westlake High School Chaparrals won that game. If I'm not mistaken, Ewers might have thrown a back-breaking pick that ended the game, which is just par for the course.
Classic, yeah.
I need to look back into that, but I do know they played in high school, so this will not be their first matchup.
Interesting, yeah. Adds a little bit of spice to the matchup here. My apologies there for almost skipping you. I genuinely was hoping to get to the Ohio State game to hear you bash Ryan Day.
I can't wait for his Ryan Day rant.
So we will jump right into that game. It is number 8, Ohio State, taking on number 9, Tennessee. This is the night game here in the shoe. Do we start with Tom or?
Yeah, start with Tom.
Okay, we'll start with Tom on this one.
Ohio State AD came out and said this today as far as Ryan Day's job security. He is absolutely staying at Ohio State, he says, but he's missing one word. Absolutely not. That's what the quote should have been. Ryan Day is a coward. The state of Ohio, the fact that they made this rule that you can't flag plant, don't get me wrong, I don't love it for Michigan. If I'm the coach, I'm not telling my kids to do that, but don't let them win the football game, and it won't happen. Like, you're better than them. You haven't beat them. They're your kryptonite. You scored 10 points. Will Howard's been very inconsistent this season. For a guy who's been kept clean, his stats look good, but his film might tell you otherwise. He's slightly above average, in my opinion. We've seen it on the national stage, boys, late game situations. He cracks and crumbles, and it's a problem. You're in the college football playoff now, and he's only been sacked 10 times. So the Ohio State O-line, they're doing their job. Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, 2 outstanding running backs that have been around for a minute for them. I love what they get from Jeremiah Smith, 10 touchdowns on the season, just shy of 1,000 yards, and Emeka Egbuka with 9 scores. But all in all, they got to get better at the QB position. They got to get better getting those quick passes out. And defensively, they got to find out what their identity is, because right now they've really struggled. Tyleik Williams will have to contain Dylan Sampson. He's going to be a problem. Can JT Tuimoloau get to the quarterback? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see that matchup too of Denzel Burke and Tennessee wide receiver Deontay Thornton. I think he's been an outstanding option for Nico Iamaleava. Nico has been inconsistent this year, but he's still a little green. And they had one bad loss to Arkansas, but their other loss was to Georgia. Other than that, they've won every other game. They had that one bad week, that one really bad slip up against Arkansas. I think the problem for Nico too, why his numbers aren't super sexy on the stat sheet, he's been sacked 24 times. The Tennessee O-line could definitely use some improvement, but their identity is running the football. The Vols as a team averaged 232 yards per game. Dylan Sampson just shy of 1,500 rushing yards, 22 scores. He's been incredible. I think James Pierce is going to get to Will Howard in this game, 7.5 sacks. Jermod McCoy is really, really good in the secondary. 7 passes defended, 4 picks. I think he gets one in this game. And the question for me is, can that Tennessee front seven stuff Ohio State's run game with Judkins and Henderson? Joshua Josephs has a knack for causing turnovers on that front line. How will they manage? I think Josh Heupel's crew answers the bell. Tennessee in an upset.
All right, I love it. Andy?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, guys, because, we kind of talked about this when this Will Howard transfer was announced last year, and I said it. Is this really an upgrade for them? Like, he is average. It's very average quarterback to me. Sure, he's a veteran. He won a lot of games at Kansas State. Did he win a lot of meaningful games at Kansas State? He's going to have to fucking lead Ohio State into a very meaningful game here. They just dropped probably the worst loss they've had in that rivalry. Nobody thought Michigan had a chance to win. Michigan didn't think they had a chance to win. They don't have a quarterback. And they came into your turf, beat you 13-10. And yeah, you may not like the flag planting or whatever, but like Tom said, then don't lose the game. You can't lose the rivalry game. Like last night in the NBA, the Knicks and the Hawks played at Madison Square Garden. The Hawks won. At the end of the game, Trae Young and he threw the dice on the Knicks logo. And they asked Jalen Brunson about it after the game. They said, well, what'd you think about that? He goes, well, if we didn't want him to do that, we should have won the game. We shouldn't have lost. So 100%. And yeah, this representative in Ohio that is introducing this bill, you should be worried about a lot more things that are going wrong in your state rather than your opposing university planting a flag on Ohio State's field and trying to turn that into a felony. That's an absolute joke that you have. You're trying to tase football players on the field after a game. Fucking joke. Anyway, going back to the game, why I think Tennessee is going to win this game is because of their running game, like Tom mentioned. Sampson, 1,485 yards and 22 touchdowns. He wasn't just doing that against inferior competition. He's played against 4 ranked teams this year. 101 yards against Georgia, 139 yards on Alabama, 92 yards against Oklahoma, 132 yards on NC State. He scored at least 1 touchdown in all of those games, too. He's gone 90 yards in all but 1 game this year, 101 plus in 10 or more performances. He is the straw that stirs the drink of the Volunteers offense. Nico, say what you want about him. He's young. He's got a lot to learn. Over his last 2 games, 8 touchdowns. He's going to need to be big. They're going to have to show poise. They're going into a hostile environment in the shoe. I think they get it done. I don't trust Ohio State. I don't trust Ryan Day. Get him out of here.
Yeah, like we've all said, the Buckeyes obviously coming off that awful 13-10 loss to Michigan in the regular season finale. It's not just a loss. I think that's going to affect them mentally. Like this is now 3 years in a row that they just cannot beat their main rival. Yeah, they're still in the playoff. Oh, that's the 4th year in a row?
4. Yeah.
Oh, that's right, because the freshman class now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good God. Okay. I if it's been 4, I don't know how you mentally recover at all, honestly. But yeah, listen, Tennessee, they've got a top 10 scoring offense and a top 10 scoring defense. They're one of the best well-rounded teams in the nation. We already talked about running back Dylan Sampson. He led the SEC with 1,485 rushing yards and 22 touchdowns. I honestly think if Ginty isn't, in the picture this year, he's maybe getting the look for best running back in the nation. You heard Andy run through his game log there. He's just been putting up the yards consistently. Not quite on Ginty-like levels, but it is the SEC. A little bit tougher competition, so you can excuse the fact that he only has almost 1,500 yards. To put that into perspective, Ohio State's duo of Judkins and Henderson, who I still think is maybe the most talented duo in the nation, they've combined for just 1,556 yards this season. So Sampson by himself isn't far behind that duo for Ohio State. Nico Ayama Leava, how does he handle this environment? It's on the road. It's going to be cold. It's going to be a night game, so it's probably going to be a little colder. But he does have a pretty good passer rating on the road, 135.5. I think as the season has progressed, he's calmed down a little bit. He's making at least slightly better decisions, and his performances are trending upward. So I think he will be fine in that regard. On the other side, Will Howard, we just torched him for 3 minutes there, but I'm going to torch him a little bit more. He had a rough game against the Wolverines, 175 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. And then, honestly, the rushing game didn't do much better. Judkins, 46 yards. Henderson, 21 yards. Will Howard, 10 yards on the ground. Just 77 yards rushing. So you can't do that against Tennessee if you want to win this ball game. Like you said, Tom, the O-line has given Will Howard time. Outside that 3-sack game in the Penn State matchup, he rarely gets sacked. It's 0 or 1 sacks per game. So we'll have to see how Tennessee does there in the trenches. I think they're going to get to him more than once, if I'm being honest. Their defense is pretty stout. That line is pretty stout. I'm going Tennessee. I think they're the better team slightly here, but also the flag planting thing has just rubbed me the wrong way the past 24 hours. I really hope Tennessee just goes in there and blows them out of the water, and then plants the fucking flag right in the middle.
Yes,
yep.
correct. Yes.
Plant that shit. Get out of there. You're into the quarterfinals. But yeah, that is going to wrap up our first round coverage of the playoffs. I hope you're enjoying the bowl games. Enjoy these playoff games. We'll be back with part 2 of the bowls, and once these games have completed themselves, we'll get right back at you with the quarterfinals. We're going to wrap up the show here quickly with our brackets. Yes, we're showing our hands a little bit, but you know what? It's everyone's doing it. March Madness, everyone loves the brackets. We now get brackets in college football. So I'll start off with Andy here. We know who we've gone with for the first round, but run us through your full brackets here.
Yeah, everybody's doing it. We're going to the quad and then the gym. We're on streaking, baby. So first round, obviously, I took Texas over Clemson for the right to play Arizona State in the Peach Bowl. Tennessee over Ohio State, so Tennessee would play Oregon in the Rose Bowl. SMU over Penn State, so SMU would go to Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. And then Notre Dame over Indiana, so Notre Dame against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Staying down there, I have Tom's Fighting Irish moving on with an upset over Georgia. I think they are better than Georgia, and I think they could beat them. I'll take Boise State to beat SMU and put a GT versus Jeremiah Love in a semifinal. I think that'd be an awesome running back matchup. And then I'll take Oregon to beat Tennessee in the Rose Bowl. And I'll take Arizona State over Texas, boys. Give me Kenny Dillingham's team to go to the semifinals. Give me Oregon and Notre Dame in the championship game with the Ducks taking it all.
Oh,
my goodness. An Arizona State call over Texas. Tom, run us through your bracket here.
All right. So for me, in my first round, I had Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, and Tennessee winning. So I have Texas beating Arizona State. I love Arizona State's story. I really do, but I think Texas is slightly the better team. Plus, they were in the CFP last year. They have that experience. Oregon beats Tennessee. The Ducks are the best coach team in the nation right now. This Boise State Penn State game is really, really hard to dictate because I just don't know. A G5 team against Penn State. Oh man, I don't want to do this. Give me Penn State to beat Boise State. I don't love it at all, but that's what's going to happen. My problem with the Notre Dame Georgia game is just I don't know if Notre Dame's going to be able to run the football the way they'll be able to against Indiana, against Georgia. So, man, this hurts so much. I'm going to take the dogs. I'm going to take the dogs.
Closet Georgia fan Tom confirmed. He picked Georgia over Notre Dame.
No. You want me to switch it up on you? I'll switch it up with Notre Dame in the title game and have them win. And I love it. Thinking about go all the way.
I'm kidding. I completely understand. But
so I have Oregon beating Texas and then Georgia beating Penn State. And then I have Oregon beating Georgia in the national title game. I think Oregon takes it all. I think they have the best football team. I had to throw an SEC team in the championship game just because. And, yeah, I think Dan Lanning will get his first national title. He is the new, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart type of coach that's going to be with his school for a very, very long time and be very, very successful. And first year in the Big Ten, Dylan Gabriel goes out high. What a remarkable collegiate story for Dylan Gabriel. And this is how it should end.
All started in Orlando, Brian.
I love how everyone that we've talked about liking in this show has just been people who have abandoned my team. We have
Yeah.
Mikey Keene, Dylan Gabriel. You got Hypel at Tennessee, but I'm not upset. But no, all right, my bracket here. I got Tennessee over Ohio State. That'll bring them into the game against Oregon. Texas taking down Clemson. I do think they then get by Arizona State. The Tennessee Oregon one I think will be closer than a lot of people think. Oregon is really good, but something that I thought of after reading a tweet earlier, someone posted the top 6 teams from last year and said, how do you think they would perform against the number 1 team in the nation? That's Oregon this year. And most of them, I think, were better than this Oregon team. So that leaves me a little worried here. Not that I, want them to win or anything, but, if Gabriel brings it home, that would be nice. So I think I take Oregon over Tennessee, Oregon over Tennessee, Texas over Arizona State, and then Oregon over Texas. The two new boys on the block in their conferences. Oregon on the left side of my bracket there. Notre Dame over Indiana easily. Penn State over SMU. I think that'll be a fun one. I still think the weather is going to affect how that one plays out, though. Wow, Notre Dame versus Georgia. I'll be honest. If the second round was also on-campus games and this was outdoors, I think I give this one to Notre Dame with that rush game. If that was the focus of the game. Indoors, I know Carson Beck hasn't looked great. The Georgia defense is just so good, though, against the run. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to go with Tom here and take... I think it'll be a really low-scoring game, which will lead to an opportunity for the upset, but I think I'm going to give Georgia the slight edge here. Penn State, Boise State. Unfortunately, Gene T's year comes to an end in this game. I'm taking Penn State in that one. I like Boise State. I just don't think they're well-rounded enough to beat Penn State. Penn State looked really good in that Oregon game. Penn State, Georgia, taking Georgia. That leads us to Oregon versus Georgia in the final. Man, I think Georgia is still the better team here, but I'm going to go with my boy Gabriel. Going to take Oregon. Dan Lanning's team, number 1, takes it home in the championship. That is the end of our CFP first round show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the games. Like I said, we'll have the part 2 of the Bulls and the next round of the CFP coming at you soon enough. Enjoy the games. We'll see everybody next week for our next shows.